Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for all of your incredible support. Today we have brand new inflation and economic data, and that means we also have a fresh update on what the 2027 cost of living adjustment could look like for millions of Social Security beneficiaries across the country. There's a lot to unpack here, and some of these numbers are actually coming in a little differently than many analysts expected. So in this video, we're going to break down the latest inflation report, what it means for the Federal Reserve, how it ties directly into Social Security benefits, and what early projections are suggesting for the 2027 COLA. If you rely on Social Security, whether you're retired, disabled, or receiving survivor benefits, this update is going to matter to you in a very real way. Let's start with the inflation data itself, because everything begins there. According to the latest report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, consumer prices rose 2.4% on an annual basis in January. That number is important for a few reasons. First, it actually came in slightly lower than many economists had anticipated. A number of analysts had expected inflation to remain closer to 2.5%, but instead we saw it ease just a bit. That 2.4% reading is also down 0.3 percentage points from the prior month, which suggests that inflation pressures may be gradually cooling rather than accelerating. Now, if you remember what we were seeing last year, inflation had climbed back up toward 3% at one point, and there were serious concerns that it could spike even higher, possibly into the 4 or 5% range. A big part of those fears came after President Donald Trump announced aggressive tariffs on U.S. imports in April 2025. Many economists warned that tariffs could raise prices on goods across the board, putting renewed upward pressure on inflation. But despite those concerns, we're now seeing inflation drift back down toward the mid-2% range. When we look deeper into the numbers, core inflation, which excludes food and energy, rose 2.5% year over year. That is actually the lowest core reading we've seen since April 2021. Core inflation is important because it strips out the more volatile categories and gives policymakers a clearer sense of underlying price trends. The fact that core CPI is at 2.5% suggests that inflation isn't just cooling in headline terms, but maybe moderating more broadly across the economy. Of course, the Federal Reserve has made it clear that its long-term target is 2% inflation. We are not quite there yet. At 2.4% headline and 2.5% core, we are still slightly above target. But compared to where we were just a year or two ago, this is a dramatically different picture. Inflation was once running well above 6, 7, even 8%. Now we're talking about being within a few tenths of a percentage point of the Fed's goal. That's a very different environment. Now here's where this ties directly into Social Security. The annual cost of living adjustment, or COLA, is calculated based on third quarter inflation data. Specifically, it compares the average consumer price index for urban wage earners and clerical workers, known as CPIW, during the third quarter of the current year to the third quarter of the previous year. Whatever that percentage increase turns out to be becomes the COLA for the following year. That means the official 2027 COLA will not be announced until October 2026, once we have the full July, August, and September data to compare against 2025. However, organizations like the Senior Citizens League regularly issue projections based on current inflation trends, and right now, based on the data available, they are projecting a 2.8% COLA for 2027. Interestingly, that is the exact same percentage as the 2026 COLA. What's even more surprising is that just last month, their projection was 2.5%. So even though inflation came in slightly lower than expected in the most recent report, their updated projection actually ticked up by 0.3 percentage points. That may seem confusing at first. If inflation is easing, why would the projected COLA rise? The answer likely lies in how the averages are being calculated over the course of the year and how earlier monthly readings factor into the third quarter projection. It's not just about 1 month's data, it's about the cumulative trend and how prices are evolving quarter by quarter. Still, a projected 2.8% COLA raises some important questions. For many seniors, even a nearly 3% increase may not feel like enough. The Senior Citizens League has pointed out that rising healthcare costs, especially Medicare Part B premiums, have been outpacing COLA increases in recent years. In 2026, Medicare Part B premiums rose by 9.7%, jumping from $185 to $290 per month. That increase alone was more than 3 times the 2.8% COLA. And it wasn't an isolated case. Part B premiums also grew faster than the COLA in 2024 and 2025. This matters because Medicare Part B premiums are typically deducted directly from Social Security checks. So even if beneficiaries see a gross increase from the COLA, a significant portion of that raise can be eaten up immediately by higher healthcare costs. When premiums rise faster than benefits, seniors effectively lose purchasing power, even in years when they receive an increase. And it doesn't stop there. Traditional Medicare does not cover dental, vision, or hearing services. That means retirees must either purchase a Medicare Advantage plan, pay for supplemental insurance, or cover those expenses out of pocket. According to research cited by the Senior Citizens League, more than 57% of seniors reported skipping at least one healthcare service in the past 12 months to cut costs. Dental care topped the list, followed by vision and hearing services. Among seniors who are financially at risk, meaning their income does not fully cover essential expenses, nearly 79% reported foregoing some type of medical care. Compare that to less than 19% among financially secure retirees. The gap is staggering and highlights just how stretched many households are, even in a lower inflation environment. Now let's talk numbers in practical terms. The current average Social Security benefit is approximately $2,071 per month. If we apply a 2.8% increase to that average, beneficiaries would see an increase of about $58 per month. That would bring the average monthly benefit up to roughly $2,129. On paper, that may sound helpful. An extra $58 per month equals nearly $700 per year. But when you consider rising premiums, property taxes, utility bills, and grocery costs, that increase can disappear quickly. If inflation continues to ease and the final COLA ends up closer to 2% instead of 2.8%, the increase would be smaller. A 2% COLA on a $2,071 benefit would equal about $41 per month. That's a difference of nearly $17 per month compared to a 2.8% adjustment. Over the course of a year, that gap adds up to more than $200. So the big question becomes this: will inflation continue to cool, or could we see renewed pressures later in the year? There are arguments on both sides. On one hand, supply chains have largely stabilized, wage growth has moderated, and energy prices have not spiked dramatically. On the other hand, global tensions, trade policies, and domestic economic growth could still influence prices in unpredictable ways. The Federal Reserve's decisions will also play a role. If inflation keeps trending downward, the Fed may feel more comfortable maintaining or even lowering interest rates. Lower rates could stimulate economic activity, but they can also sometimes reignite price pressures. It's a delicate balancing act. For Social Security recipients, though, the calculation is ultimately mechanical. It doesn't matter what policymakers intend or what markets predict. The COLA is determined strictly by the data. If third-quarter inflation averages 2.8% higher than the previous year's third quarter, then that's what beneficiaries will receive. If it's lower, the adjustment will be lower. If it's higher, benefits will increase accordingly. Historically, COLAs have varied widely. In recent years, beneficiaries saw unusually large adjustments because inflation spiked dramatically. Those increases were welcome, but they were also a reflection of very painful price hikes in everyday life. Now we're moving into a period of more moderate inflation, and that naturally means smaller COLAs as well. Some seniors argue that the CPIW does not accurately reflect the spending patterns of retirees. Older Americans tend to spend a larger share of their income on healthcare, which often rises faster than general inflation. There have been ongoing discussions in Congress about potentially switching to a different index, such as the CPIE, which is designed to better reflect the expenses of elderly households. But for now, the CPIW remains the official benchmark. As we look ahead to the rest of the year, every monthly inflation report will matter. Each data release will either push projections slightly higher or slightly lower. And while we won't know the final number until October, these early estimates give us a general sense of direction. For now, the projection stands at 2.8%. That suggests relative stability compared to 2026. It does not signal a dramatic drop, nor does it indicate a surge. It reflects an economy that is cooling gradually but not collapsing, stabilizing but not booming. The real challenge for many retirees will continue to be the gap between benefit growth and healthcare costs. If Medicare premiums continue rising faster than the COLA, even a 2.8% increase could feel insufficient. And if inflation surprises to the upside later this year, projections could shift again. So I want to hear from you. If the 2027 COLA does come in at 2.8%, would that feel fair to you? Would it be enough to keep up with your expenses? Or do you believe inflation is still hitting your household harder than the official numbers suggest? Do you think the final adjustment will end up lower, closer to 2%, or could it surprise to the upside? As always, I will continue monitoring every inflation report, every Federal Reserve update, and every projection from organizations tracking this closely. The moment we see a meaningful shift in the numbers, I'll bring you the latest details and break it down in plain language so you know exactly what it means for your benefits. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being part of this community. And if you found this update helpful, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an important Social Security update. I'll see you in the next one.